It's Dr. Leaf. This will just be a real quick overview of the somatic symptom disorders. So, the main element with all of these disorders is that there is some sort of physical or medical related symptom. And these are relatively rare, except for maybe hypochondriasis. But the takeaway when you're considering this chapter, that means that your client's saying, I have lost the ability to, walk straight. I can't swallow. I have a hard time breathing. I think I have something. I'm very sick. And there is no medical reason for them to have those symptoms. So hopefully this will make more sense as we kind of dive in. So let's start first with somatic symptom disorder. So this is a name change. Those of you that were familiar with DSM-4, I think this one used to be called pain disorder. So this one, the client has some sort of somatic or physical sensation in one or more specific body areas. So it could be the pins and needles, the feeling that you get when your leg falls asleep, numbness, something like that. And there is no medical reason for it. So what that means is that you have to rule out, with your client's help, of course, rule out any medical explanations, right? Because there might be a medical reason for that. For example, a common side effect of chemotherapy is neuropathy, so having the pins and needle sensation in your extremities, that would be the reason for that. When we're talking about this disorder, there is no medical reason for those sensations. They have these very excessive reactions to the sensation. That's because they're so hyper focused on it, and this is unnatural. It shouldn't be here. It really bothers them. It can also be pain, right? They just have pain there. So this would probably extend to things like phantom limb syndrome. And so, what we would focus on in counseling is how they interpret the sensation. So, that very cliche, what does that mean? What does it mean that it's pins and needles? What does that mean, or what is that like? And then working on their reactions, because in addition to, I'm sure it's uncomfortable having those physical symptoms, it's their reaction to it that winds up really causing a lot of problems in their life. It doesn't need to be pain that they feel, but we would specify if it is pain. And again, uh, we got to rule out actual medical causes for this. Hypochondriasis, this is now called illness anxiety disorder. The names are used interchangeably. So if someone comes to you and says illness anxiety disorder, they're referring to hypochondriasis, and new documents and books and treatment guides. If you see the term illness anxiety disorder, they're referring to hypochondriasis. So with this one, the person thinks they have something, right? So their ear pops or their eye twitches, and they say, "I'm having a stroke." They have a sore throat, and they think it's throat cancer. It's always an extreme. Doesn't have to be. That's just usually what it is. That it's going to be the extreme. So interestingly, and not to make light of the current situation, how do you think people with hypochondriasis are responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, right? They often have no actual symptoms because people do get sick. But these guys have no symptoms or very minimal symptoms. So people get sick, you get a sore throat. That happens, right? You start feeling your throat get a little scratchy, then it gets sore, you're coughing a little bit, and then it gets better. For them, though, it winds up being this monumental problem. It is incredibly draining on them because they worried, this is it, I'm dying. This is the worst thing that happens. They just go to that immediate place. lots of anxiety and time and energy goes to how to stay well and knowing the symptoms of everything. Lots of body checking, right? So when they're getting ready in the morning or getting ready for their day, they go and they take their shower, they step out, they look in front of the mirror, and they start looking, right? Was that freckle always there? What is that bump? Why is uh, why does this area look different than it did yesterday? Um, so for this, because you might have periods of time in your life, for example, right now with COVID, you might be thinking, I went grocery shopping and now I'm coughing, and you get kind of hyper focused on that. It's understandable. This is a good example of taking things into consideration. For them, it's preoccupation with the illness for 6 months. And the specifics can change during that 6 month time. It doesn't have to be just one illness, right? It might fluctuate between I have an eye problem, I have an ear problem, I have a heart problem, but there's some consistency with obsessing over this for 6 months. So, what do you think the big difference is between this and obsessive compulsive disorder with obsessions about staying well? Well, the big difference is that with hypochondriasis, the person thinks they already have it, right? I have it. I coughed. I have the illness. With obsessive compulsive, it is about preventing the illness, right? So I wash my hands so I don't get this, right? These folk think they already have it, right? And do you think they seek or avoid help? Well, they do a lot of doctor shopping, so it's a lot of bouncing around. I went to this guy, he said I'm okay, but I don't trust him. So I went to this other physician and she said I'm okay, but she went to this school, so I don't trust her opinion. Now think about this disorder with the advent of the internet and things like WebMD, right? What does WebMD always end with for every illness? May result in death, right? And they have to do that for like legal reasons to say, yeah, like I get left untreated, anything can lead to death, I guess. And so when they see that, this feeds into the hypochondriasis, right? That I am dying. You see, death is an outcome of this disorder. And a lot of the symptoms can be nebulous or ambiguous, right? Like generally feeling unwell, feeling run down, feeling tired. Well, like we're all tired, right? And so when they look at all this, it reinforces the negative thought. And then when they go look for help, it's really difficult for them to accept that they're okay. So help seeking for physicians for medical reasons happens quite a bit. Does it happen for mental health though? I suspect it happens considerably less often. This is probably a case of family or loved one saying, hey, you need to get some help, right? Because this is very taxing on the family members and the loved ones as well. Imagine if your partner or your sibling or a family member always felt this way. It wouldn't take very long probably before you would say, okay, this is going to be a problem. Let's get you some help. Conversion disorder. So with this one, the person, for again no medical reason, they lose some sort of voluntary motor or sensory ability. So in other words, one day I just lose the ability to um, to walk with my regular gait. I lose the ability to swallow. I lose my vision. And once again, and especially with this one, we need to rule out medical conditions. So the pattern then for this person, for this disorder is if these things happen, that person is going to immediately go probably to an emergency room, if not their primary care physician. And that guy is going to say, hey, I can't find any reason for this, right? There's no neurological, and sometimes they do need to go through the brain imaging procedures and things like that to rule out tumors, growths, cancers, degenerative diseases, things like that. None of that's there. They've lost this ability, and there's no medical reason for it. A good case study on this would be, I get good as a relative term, is Anna O, who was, I think, Freud's client who lost her vision, I think, and he was able to kind of talk it back to her, for lack of a better word. A lot of times the pattern for this is there is a very extreme or very sudden stressor. So you saw something so horrifying, right? So it might be you saw something really traumatic and you lose the ability to use your voice. A more contemporary case study is I had a peer who worked with a woman who had a needle phobia, and she went to the dentist, and she was doing well even with the needle phobia. And at some point, I guess the dentist needed to inject, or there was some other problem, and she got triggered, and she could not close her jaw. She lost her jaw locked in place, open, and they got an oral surgeon. They did all this stuff, and it just was there. It would not close. And of course, this feeds her panic and anxiety, so it stays there. So they get to a point where they say, we have to go to a hospital, right? We don't know what else to do. I think there was a therapist in the office suite next door or something. They asked him to come in, and that was my peer. And just kind of, can you help calm her down while this is happening? And as they're talking, he did not know that this was what was happening. He was just, okay, you must be really scared. The basic attending skills. This is rough. You're having a bad day. And as he's talking to her and she's communicating as best she can, her jaw slowly kind of starts to close, right? And so that would be an example. If you're a fan of King of the Hill, the episode where Hank Hill walks in on his mother being intimate with her boyfriend, and then he loses his vision, right? So this is when we see something really terrifying. And I would expect the stressor to be pretty big, and for it to be pretty sudden. Not you walk into your house and you see like your kids covered in paint or the house flipped upside down. This would be like you walked in maybe on like a homicide or something really life-threatening, but very sudden and very extreme. Why this happens, I don't have a good explanation. My theory is all that angst and anxiety and everything, it's got to go somewhere. And so it just kind of shuts down something, right? I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to which ability, whether it's sensory or motor or where it goes. I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to it. It just goes to wherever it goes. And that is the body's way of reacting to this really extreme, really sudden stressor. So you can imagine then treatment for this would be probably working through that trauma, and we would expect the physical condition to improve with it. Factitious disorder. Y'all have heard of this one probably. Does anybody remember Munchausen and Munchausen by proxy? That's what this is, right? We now call it factitious disorder. So there's two versions of this. I shouldn't say versions. There's the one version, factitious disorder, and then there's a specifier of imposed on another. So with factitious disorder, the person goes to incredible lengths to portray themselves as being ill or injured or unwell, um, and there is no external reward for this. So, what do you think external reward means? Well, those of you that have kids or were once kids, which I would imagine is everybody, think of the times that you pretended to be sick so you could stay home. And maybe you take the thermometer and you put it up to the lamp, or you rub it in your hand so that it says you have a fever when you don't. Well, the external reward here is that you get to miss school, right? Let's say that you want to take one of my exams, you open it up, you are woefully unprepared. So you go to Texas Med Clinic, you say, I've got this migraine, my head hurts, I can't. You get a doctor's note, you come to me, you say, oh my goodness, look, I have the flu, I'm so sick, can I please retake the exam? The external reward would be getting a redo on the exam or an extension, right? For this, there is no obvious reward. In other words, there's no reason for them to be doing this other than for them to say, look how sick I am. And they will go to really great lengths, such as doctoring, no pun intended, doctoring medical records, actually making themselves sick, right? Ingesting stuff to make themselves sick, um, trying to find people to validate this, really painting the picture. This is not just they go to you and say, oh my goodness, I have a history of migraines, but they would come in with a lot of supporting stuff. And the illnesses tend to be um, really heavy things. So right now, I suspect there probably would be a lot of people, if they have this disorder, who say, I have COVID. Um, Now, by proxy means, or imposed on another now, they're doing it to someone else, right? So this would be the cases where a parent makes their child sick. So um, they might put substances in the child's food. They might withhold food or water. Really do stuff that actually makes the child ill, so that they can say, look, my kid is so sick. And so what do you think why this happens? Well, the prevalent theory is it's a lot of, look at me, the validation. Look at what a great parent I am. Look at what a great spouse I am. It doesn't have to be the kid. Look at what a great child I am, taking care of my elderly parent. Look at me. Um, I have all this illness, and I'm still going to school and still making it work, right? And that's sort of the disorder, that this person is getting this validation from a really unhealthy source. This is a very difficult disorder to treat. I think on Blackboard I have an article for y'all on the difficulties. I'll double check, but it is very difficult to treat this because of the lengths that they can go to with the doctoring of medical records, fabricating them. There's a lot of subterfuge with this one, so this takes time. It's very difficult. You'd probably be working with this client's medical provider and things like that. What we worry about is them actually doing something that's not fixable, right? So they go too far with this. Now, this is not because this is not a character thing. This is not a value thing. This is the disorder. This is the symptoms of this disorder making them do this. This is not someone who's like a bad person or a dishonest person, but the symptoms of, I want all eyes on me to see me this way. That's what we need to work with. So it can be frustrating, and as easy as it might be to go to a place of that person has these character flaws, or it's a personality thing, really try to stay focused on the symptoms and alleviating that, and trying to probably find the root cause of it. A real good case study that has a lot of detail now is the story of Gypsy Rose. I think her last name is Blatchford, but Googling Gypsy Rose would be enough, and that's about a mother who really portrayed her daughter as being very ill. I think Hulu has a series, but even if you don't have Hulu, I think there have been a couple documentaries on this family and how the mom kept the daughter very sick, although the daughter did not have any underlying medical conditions, right? So that would be a good example. If this was kind of too ambiguous to kind of wrap your head around, I would check that out to see it in action. That might do it for us for today. So not a whole lot. The takeaway for this section is that there are medical or physical symptoms that the client presents with, and there is no medical reason for those symptoms to be there. If you have questions or comments, please let me know, and I will hopefully get to see you guys and talk to you guys soon. I hope all of you are well, and I'll see you later. Bye.